Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another little quick live video to start off the day. We've got a big show coming up in just under a half an hour, which I'll give you details on in just a little bit, but had a story that I just have to at least touch on briefly before we get going with the day, and that is that coming out of the whole impeachment process, now we've been 3 or 4 months in this thing. Donald Trump has been impeached, will probably not be removed, almost certainly not. And so, what is he thinking as he transitions out of this rough period in his presidency? Well, he's thinking what you'd think he's thinking. He wants to now hunt down all of his enemies. And in an enemies list that is growing ever longer by the week, Trump, says a source, wants John Bolton to be criminally investigated for possibly mishandling classified information. There are other people as well, though. Romney, Schiff, and Nadler are also in his, they say crosshairs. I would probably avoid that sort of language in the future in articles, but Vanity Fair is saying that he's in their crosshairs. Hey, everybody, it's not my birthday. Tomorrow's my birthday. Don't tell anybody, okay? Okay, don't tell anybody. So, Republicans who have talked to the president in recent days say that he's now out for revenge. Quote, it's payback time, which comes right before clobbering time. So, the spring could be quite exciting. Quote, he has an enemies list that is growing by the day. Some of the people include Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, Mitt Romney, John Bolton. So it's both sides, by the way. I wonder if there's a possibility of Susan Collins, now that she's voted for witnesses. Is she possibly on that list as well? I doubt it, but maybe. Quote, Trump's playbook is simple. Go after people who crossed him during impeachment. Although, so we got people on the Democratic side, people on the Republican side. Supposedly, out of all of those, the person he's most frustrated with, sort of understandably, is John Bolton. Theo, I actually just finished the trilogy for the second time. Maybe I can talk about that once I'm done with this story. So, what's interesting about it is that Bolton obviously turned on Trump, and Trump values loyalty more than literally anything else. What Bolton revealed could have made all the difference in the world if we lived in a different world than we do. In the end, it won't really matter at all what John Bolton said. Like, honestly, it didn't move any Republican votes. They didn't have witnesses or evidence. He's not going to be removed. Fundamentally, nothing has changed as a result of John Bolton coming out with his statements. And it certainly seems like now, fast forwarding to if the book is actually published, and Simon & Schuster say that it will be, okay, it'll come out, it'll look bad, there'll be, a 1 to 2 day news cycle based around it, but that's not really going to change anything for Donald Trump either. And yet, Donald Trump has him at the top of his enemies list. And we're not talking about, like, I'm going to attack him on Twitter sort of list. There'll probably be some behind the scenes, like trying to stop him from getting other jobs and stuff like that. No, they want him to be arrested. According to a former official, the White House is planning to leak White House emails from Bolton that purportedly allege Bolton abused his position as at the National Security Council. The official said that West Wing officials have discussed releasing emails showing Bolton was doing pay-to-play. A person close to Bolton dismissed the story, saying John plays things straight. So is it possible that they have some sort of emails showing, him doing something along those lines? It's certainly possible. The White House right now is full of people that are trying to personally profit off of it. No one more so than Donald Trump himself. The joke is a bit on John Bolton, though, because Donald Trump is totally allowed to. Like, we've decided as a country that he can sell out, domestic policy, foreign policy, whatever he wants, as long as the goal is for him to make money. John Bolton, though, is not only at a lower level when he was in government, but is now out of government. So there's the possibility that he could end up going to prison as a result of this. That would be an interesting little turn at the last moment. What's a little bit darker, I would say, is the wanting to target like Nadler and Schiff. I thank you for the birthday greetings from the UK. I can't say what form that's going to come in. Announcing investigation seems like it would be a little bit on the nose, but he does like have a couple of go-tos, and that seems to be one of them. Like, if you found out that there was some sort of thing looking into Adam Schiff, how shocked would you be? Scale of 1 to 10. Maximum 3. Maximum in terms of shockedness. And so there is the possibility that for daring to impeach him, speaking for 75 hours straight, they could pay the price as a result of that. And what is particularly exciting about this, Kaylin, I am upset, and we're going to be on the show. We're going to be talking a lot about the Iowa caucuses. So we are right on the cusp of the State of the Union. We're going to be doing live coverage of that later on. And like there is the possibility that he will actually bring these things up. If I remember correctly, the last time, hold on a second, Todd Sisson, you do realize every time you talk about Trump, he wins. Okay, look, I understand that we're just fundamentally going to have a disagreement about that. I didn't want him to become president, honestly. It was the last thing that I wanted, but he is the president. He is incredibly powerful. I'm not simply going to stick my head in the sand for multiple years and allow him to run roughshod over this country, you know, like terrorize different communities and all of that, and just not talk about it because I'm worried that he's going to win in some sense. You don't win by having no defense like 100%. I just don't agree with that. There are other people that if you want to like go, you know, his whole second term without ever hearing about him, there are people in the news that'll give you that experience. I hope that you don't choose that, but I am not going to do that for the rest of his first term if he gets a second term. I'm just not going to do that. But anyway, so it is entirely possible that he will talk about impeachment. Now, there's Haroon, do you think that Bernie Sanders won the Iowa caucus? I mean, based on their internal numbers, it looks like there's a pretty good chance, although we're going to have to wait until sometime later today to know for sure. But thank you. GOP senators are apparently both publicly and privately telling him not to discuss impeachment during the State of the Union address. There's people who are sort of wording it as this is not what my constituents are focused on, which is perfectly fine. Again, doesn't mean that you don't go through the impeachment process just because people don't choose, you know, who they're going to support in the presidential election based on it. But yeah, they want to reassure their voters heading into an election that might be tough for some of them that he is focused on the things that the voters actually care about. But they also, like, the undercurrent is, what is it going to look like? How is he going to talk about impeachment? Is he going to come across as either, you know, a sort of petulant child or potentially something darker and scarier, which could be damaging to them as well? Why is the DNC not carrying, Kayla says, why is the DNC not carrying their houses crumbling around them? Iowa was a complete shitstorm. It was. I mean, I'm sure that on some level they don't like it, but it depends on what the objective is. Now, bear in mind, the Iowa thing, like it's not... It's Iowa, the Iowa Democratic Party that runs it. We do have a decentralized system of elections. Not everything is run through the DNC. Even some of the things that are partially run or coordinated with the DNC are not like led by the DNC. So just bear that in mind. There can be failures on all sorts of levels that don't necessarily always go back to the DNC. So look, we're going to be doing live coverage. You should definitely tune in later on. I'm going to be there. Anna is going to be there. I believe JR as well. I don't know. Do you happen to know? Is there a fourth? It might just be the three. But this could theoretically be his last State of the Union address. Like, if there's any justice in the world, which there probably is not, it will be his last State of the Union. And so not only is impeachment obviously on his mind, but also he needs to set the narrative for his base going into this election. So what is his message going to be? It might be that he will try to sort of ride out the fact that in some metrics the economy is doing well, sort of like, you know, don't change horses in midstream sort of thing. But it's also possible that he could go in a really dark direction. This would be the night to announce that if that was how this thing was going to go. Also, buckle up, because his last State of the Union, I think, was 117 minutes. I could be wrong, but I believe it was the longest State of the Union ever. And people have analyzed his speeches are getting longer, like his rally speeches, as he's in office longer. It is possible we could be listening to this thing for more than 2 hours. And then, of course, there will be the responses. Bernie Sanders is going to do one as well, which should certainly be excited. Yeah, it could be a real trip. It could be something. And so you're definitely not going to want to miss that. Oh, yeah. So did finish The Good Place. I'm not going to give any spoilers. I liked it. Good job. Not perfect, maybe, but who knows what would be. They did a good job. And I really like the show. I'm sad to see it go. Oh, yeah. So someone mentioned... Hold on a second. Actually, Theo says, can you share the book you're reading right now? So I did just finish reading the Red Mars trilogy again. It is by Kim Stanley Robinson. It is an epic sci-fi series, 3 books, over the course of a couple of 100 years about the terraforming of Mars. It was awesome. It's packed full of science in a whole bunch of different areas. It was pretty amazing. Must have been. I've read it twice now. What I'm reading right now, I'm reading, I forget the name. It's a fantasy novel. set in like a fantasy desert city called Sharakai. I don't know. I'm giving it a try. I'm not 100% sold yet. I've only read like the first paragraph, but I'm interested in that. My reading is getting more and more sci-fi and fantasy because usually I read right before I go to sleep, and I desperately need, something that's not about politics. Last night was just so, God, it I can't take it. I don't want it. I have read The Expanse, all of them, and the short stories. I can't take it. I don't want it. But it's not like that was the first time. Do you guys remember 2018? Do you remember Kansas, the night of that primary? It was ridiculous. Or in 2016, California, like how long it took for the results. Like, oh, it just wears away at you. And one of the things that made it even worse was, like, I was tweeting about how frustrated I was that people were just sharing like whatever they heard. They don't check it, they don't Google it, they just share it. Something pops into their head, it sounds good, like you have an inclination, you want to believe that something is true, and so people are going to like and they're going to retweet what says that they're right. Like, there was so much misinformation and just people not caring enough about the material to actually Google it. Like all the stuff going around about the app, like obviously there's problems with the app, but like the people who were like 100% Buttigieg made the app, I got it. And look, we have the disclosures that were coming out, and responsible people were talking about the disclosures that they had paid that app company. Okay, now before you then take that and say, and thus he made the app and presumably put in some sort of backdoor where he could steal the election, like, do just a little bit of Googling. Like, that company makes other apps, political canvassing apps, things for volunteers, things that campaigns would use. And so the fact that he paid money to that company does not mean that he invested in the construction of that app. He could be buying one of the political apps that they already have. And in fact, it turns out that over the past year, I believe Klobuchar, Biden, and Gillibrand, all of them gave money to this company, presumably for one of the political canvassing apps that they have sold for some time. You know how I found out that stuff? By Googling for like 90 seconds. It was super simple. But I noticed that when I started tweeting out those, I guess, inconvenient truths, nobody cared. Like, the people who were like, no, Buttigieg definitely made the app, he stole this thing, 100 times as many retweets, 100 times as many likes. Someone who's like, hey guys, pump the brakes. First of all, it looks like Bernie's still going to win. Second of all, it looks like this company actually has other apps. Nobody cares about that stuff. Nobody's interested. And that is really depressing, because media is a big thing. It's not one thing. It's a lot of different voices in a lot of different forms. But the fact that the people who are trying to be accurate and reasonable are always going to have to compete with people who are just, their thing is, I'm going to see what people want to hear, what they desperately want to believe is true, and I'm just going to tell them it. I'm just going to say that it's true. And nobody ever tweets, I want to apologize because I retweeted something last night, sort of in the fervor of what was going on. And it turns out that it was untrue. I apologize if I helped to misinform anyone. In the future, I'm going to be a little bit more careful before I spread these things. And in particular, I will not be spreading the people who were spreading this misinformation. I will be more critical of them in particular. Literally no one has ever said that. You spread things that are false, nobody cares. Nobody remembers even. The incentives are all wrong on social media. And that is, on top of all of the other problems of last night, that is so incredibly frustrating. I'm not having a stroke now. That'll come later, based on diet. Have you seen the Saga comics? I have not. Just people be reasonable. Like, it's why I'm never going to be a success, honestly. There's no reason. Why would you? Why would you be reasonable? Yeah, nobody admits that they're wrong. That's where I don't know if you were watching the coverage last night, but I wanted to add on to they were having a conversation. They were saying no one on TV in political media ever pays any sort of price for being dead wrong. And I wanted to add on and say, you're right, but it ain't just TV. Nobody in any form of media ever pays any sort of price for being wrong. Not if they were wrong in a way that reassured their followers, their audience, that things were going to be okay. Whoever gets mad at a person for a horrible prediction, a prediction that when it was made was obviously not true. Nobody cares about that. I want you to be wrong in a way that makes me feel warm and cozy. I want you to tell me the sort of things that are a verbal, light stroking of my head to make me feel a little bit better. That's all, really. Anyway, the reason I talk about this now is we were on night 1. We have got a bunch of these nights to go, and unfortunately, I don't think that any are going to be as bad as Iowa, but there's going to be a lot of bad nights, and that's really unfortunate. Okay, everybody. I would love to talk longer, but we do have a show coming up, and on it, I'm going to be joined by Jordan Ewell, as I am every other Tuesday. It's going to be awesome. We're going to talk about last night, but also author, podcaster, and founder of Vox, Ezra Klein, is also going to be in studio to talk about his book about polarization, which seems especially relevant this week. Both of last night and with the State of the Union. So should be an awesome conversation there. We've got so much that we're going to talk about. I have read Dune. I read the first one. I wasn't a huge fan. Maybe I need to read more of them. But anyway, thank you as always for joining me in this little live video. In 10 minutes, the full show starts, so definitely tune in there. I'll see you on the other side.